And a very good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Issues and Attitudes. My name is Jeff Owens, General Manager at WEIU. We are today talking to the Executive Director of SACIS. Making his first appearance on the show is Mr. David Schayer.
Thank you very much. I'm pleased to be here. Thank you.
Well, thanks for coming in. And I know that the topic is always a tough one to talk about, but the value that you provide the community and some of the information we get out today will hopefully be valuable to people that need it or might need it in the future. And I always tell, before we get into SACIS, can you give us a little background on you and how you got here and all that?
Sure. Well, as I mentioned earlier, I'm originally from the Kankakee area, so it's kind of good to be back after being out of state for a while. It's good to be back in familiar territory but I've spent 23 years in the nonprofit business, a lot of that with the American Red Cross, ALS Association, and for the last several years been working with domestic violence, sexual assault, child abuse, and so spent most of my life trying to help people who I say have had a really bad day. And so it is very challenging work. It's very stressful work, but this is a great organization. We've been doing business here for 45 years now. That SACIS has been going, actually started at Eastern in 1977. A number of professors that got involved and were interested and wanted to provide services for people who had been through a sexual assault or trauma. And so we've gone from having a few volunteers to one part-time staff member, and we've been growing over the years, and it was really exciting for me to be a part of this organization and hopefully help make us, propel us toward greater success as well.
If you don't mind, can you go into a little bit more detail about what exactly SACIS is, in case there's somebody out there that sees this or hears this and has no idea?
Yeah, SACIS is like a lot of acronyms for a Sexual Assault Counseling and Information Service. So what we provide are three major levels of programs and services for sexual assault victims and significant others, and so their partners or family members. So there's a medical advocacy component. So if someone does undergo a sexual assault, they can go to a local hospital, Sarah Bush Lincoln Hospital here, and have an examination done. And there are state laws that provide rights for sexual assault providers, and we send advocates that are on call 24 hours a day to respond to the hospital and help people there, and helping them get through that, which is also very traumatic. I mean, you've gone through one trauma, and then it's stressful to be in a hospital and have someone there that knows what you're going through and can help you make decisions about what you want to do to recover. And so that's a major component. We have about, it kind of fluctuates, but we're about 60 a year. And we cover 9 counties. And so we have a pretty wide area. We have satellite offices in Olney and Robinson. But we get, I'd say the majority of our cases are here in Coles County. And so the medical advocacy is a key component. And then sort of the next phase is, if the law enforcement gets involved, we can work with the state's attorney, and if they want to prosecute, we have legal advocates that provide help to people getting through the legal process, and helping them with things like protective orders and no contact orders, and helping them understand what could happen in a courtroom and getting them prepared, which is also traumatic if people try to stay away from hospitals and courthouses. But so that's a key component of what we do. And then prevention work is another key component as well. And so we work with a lot of public schools throughout the area. We provide classroom training. It's evidence-based, age-appropriate conversations about things like, what is a healthy relationship? What does consent look like? What does it sound like? And just helping kids kind of begin learning those skills and understanding what they can do, and even as we kind of call a bystander, or someone as a friend, what they can do to help help prevent and mitigate those things from happening. And so we do about over 4,000 students last year that we provided those just school-based prevention education alone. And so it's an ongoing. It's not just something that happens once a month. And lately I mentioned we had about 60 a year, so it's a little over about 5 a month. We've been averaging 1 or 2, 3 calls a week for the last several weeks just at Sarah Bush, and so we're seeing the numbers are going up.
What do you think that would be? Is it the summer, the weather, kids are out of school, or a
number
combination?
Of things, really. And I think there's sometimes with COVID there was a lot of hesitancy going to a hospital as well, and so while we may see maybe the hospital calls go down, but the requests for services absent a hospital visit continue to increase. And so our advocacy numbers, we do civil advocacy, criminal advocacy. We help people just with other resources. And so if there's something that we can't provide, or we know that Hope of East Central Illinois has a service or program, and we'll work with them. We'll work with the child advocacy centers and other nonprofit organizations, DCFS. Or people need, sometimes, not sometimes, a lot of times, someone, they get out of a situation, they show up at the hospital, and we provide help, and they've got there with nothing but the clothes they had on, and they're homeless. And so we'll work on trying to find temporary shelter for them. And we've gotten some grant funding to provide emergency housing and assistance for a couple months rent, and help them with the utility deposit, help them for a couple months with rent payments and those things, that they can begin to get back on their feet and most importantly, to get out of a horribly toxic, violent situation and begin building their life.
There you go. I saw something about also safe bars, since we're here in EIU. Could you talk about that?
Safe Bars is an initiative that we're starting to undertake, and kind of a pilot program, and working with bars and providing training to bar owners, bartenders, and helping to recognize signs that basically trying to help prevent sexual assault from happening. And so we're going through that, and we're doing that here. We're doing some pilots in Coles County and Crawford and Albany and those areas as well. So it's trying for us to just say, well, we have a hotline, we have programs in schools, but I was in college a while back myself, and so I think we're trying to find as many partners as we can that can be a partner with us in helping get messaging out, and something even as just having the phone number of our confidential 24-hour hotline that people can call if they think they've experienced it, and what they can do and provide that help.
We're talking to David Schayer today from SACIS here in Charleston. David, what do you get asked the most? You've been in town a year now. What do you get asked the most from SACIS' point of view?
I think it's you're a guy, and how did you end up in an organization that a lot of people think is just for women? And that is true. It is, statistically, there are 1 in 4 women are statistically likely to experience a sexual assault in their lifetime, and 1 in 6 men are boys. But I have a 2.5-year-old daughter, and I have a grown daughter who's married as well. But having a young little girl, to me, it's kind of a personal thing, and I like to be able to help people, and I think we also need to get more men involved in this. It's like, oh well, that's a woman's thing to do, and it's not. It affects everyone, and the overwhelming majority of perpetrators of sexual violence are men, and so one of the things that I try to do is, how do we get more guys involved in finding ways that they can help, and just learning about it, being open to saying, let's talk about what healthy relationship looks like, or things that are like, well, it's just boys will be boys, right? We hear that a lot.
Yeah.
And it's not right. And so I think it's having, getting more men involved in this is a big thing. And to me, I always look for something that's a challenge as well. And so to me, it's exciting to be a part of it, and continue to go out, and we're talking with, even recruiting more men to be part of our board of directors, for example. And so we're having conversations with folks about that. And I think that's probably the biggest question. It's like, I'll tell people where I work. I'm like, well, you work there. I'm like, yeah, I work there. I'm proud to work there, and to be a part of an organization and it's not
that
just
helps people. Yeah,
not just helping women, but there are men that get sexually assaulted.
Yeah, it's one of those underreported things, and
we may a lot of reasons why they don't want to report it. It's embarrassing, or there's family. There's just a lot of things behind why people don't, and we're not blaming them because they don't. There's reasons why, and so but we want to be able to support them. That's with things like counseling that we provide, which is all of our services are free. We don't charge a dime for any service that we provide to the community. And we're able to do that because of the grants, and we, just like a lot of nonprofits, we compete for grants with like everyone else, and limited dollars. And so But that's just a fundamental part of our mission is to be able to provide those programs at no cost to people.
I always love to talk about, when we're talking about this kind of show, or this kind of topic on this show, is a success story. Now, I know you've only been here for a year, but have you seen some success stories where someone got out of a relationship, now they're doing great in a new job or a new setting? And I know you can't say names, but can you think of one or two?
Yeah, there's several that come to mind. I think it's particularly with COVID, when the courts began to shut down or very limited access. And so the wheels of justice spin slow for many people anyway. But when we began to, in the last couple of months, we've had some cases where it's very difficult to get to a trial because then the person experiencing the trauma has to tell the story again.
Yeah.
If they choose to do that, and so you sort of get re-victimized, and then it's like there's then the defense attorney's like, well, why were you wearing that, or why were you out at a certain time, and it's all of those things that kind of keep people from going through it. But we've had some cases that go through the criminal process, and some people have been sentenced to basically life in prison for the rest of their lives for what they've done, and that's a success story. People that send a card to us just, thanking us for being there to believe them. A lot of people feel like, well, no one's going to believe me. Yeah. Or, the guy's the person who did this is a popular coach, somewhere, or, and so no one's, they're going to believe him over me. But we believe everyone that tells us. If someone tells us they've been sexually assaulted or sexually harassed, we believe them. And so that's a big reward too, just knowing that people know that we're there, and getting more people involved. And another success we had recently was we hadn't had a fundraising event in about 2 years because of COVID, and we did a new event, and a great Sarah Bush Lincoln was our presenting sponsor for the event, and we raised a little over $11,000 for the first time doing anything in a while, and so
that's great.
A great event. It was a lot of fun, and we got some people came out, and we didn't spend a lot of time at the event. We wanted people just to kind of mingling, but we took a few minutes to talk about what we do, and I think it really resonated with people that were there and came up, afterwards and say, we're really glad that this organization's here helping people. So those are just little things that happen, but
I had your predecessor on so many times, and I always used to joke with her at the end of the show, I hope I don't have to see you because you go. This program has to go away because we all become better humans. But unfortunately, like you said, there's been 60 cases so far.
Talk about we just went through a strategic planning process, and we had a lot of discussion about is our vision that there's a world without sexual assault, and I'm from the Midwest, we're very pragmatic, and I said that's probably not 100% realistic, and so let's be our vision to be that we're there for every person who needs help.
Yeah, whether it's 1 or 60 this year.
Right, and so it's and we had about 200. I mentioned the counseling, about 225. Clients that we provided free counseling sessions with last year.
Now, how long does counseling go on if someone is a victim of sexual assault?
As long as they need it.
Okay, so it could be years then, right?
It could be, and someone can go through a counseling session and things are going well, and then they feel like they're doing well. They've got a plan that they've worked out, and they're following that, and then something can happen in a couple of years. They hear a song, they see something.
The triggers, they call that, right?
Trigger, right? And so something triggers it, and then or they see someone in a parking lot, or what, there's just a million things, and so they can call our toll-free hotline again, and we'll get them referred to a counselor, and then, but yeah, as long as they need it, we'll be there for them.
It's a tough question to ask, and because I don't know if there's a correct answer, but how do the doctors or you or the police determine if it actually is a sexual assault? Well,
the hospital is probably one of the biggest things. I mean, if someone tells us we believe it, believe it.
Yeah, I know you believe it.
But they'll go through an examination at the hospital, and there's it's called a rape kit, a test kit, and those get sent off to the Illinois State Police for testing and to do that and to find if there's evidence there. And so that's, from an evidentiary, I'm not an attorney, but from an evidence standpoint, that's the key thing. And certainly if there are witnesses, if they go through law enforcement and talk with the state's attorneys, and if they feel like they've got enough evidence, and they go through that route. And so that's, I think, to me, DNA is probably the strongest.
There you go. Okay.
Strongest evidence there is.
You said that so far you have about 60 calls. Is that in the calendar year 2022 so far? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, in our kind of our fiscal year, but that's
okay.
So, but it's been about the average. It's running anywhere from 57, 58, and I think we're going to be higher than that this year. That's just for the medical. That's just for the hospitals. And so again, those are just the people that decided to have the courage to go and do it. There's a lot more, I think, that don't.
Is awareness, you think, a reason also maybe people at higher numbers? Or not?
I think I would like to hope so. To believe that people have more confidence, that they've learned more, and are just to know what resources available. And a lot of times it's that, well, I didn't know that. I didn't know there was a SACIS here, or I didn't know there was a center in Decatur, or Champaign, or Vandalia, or Effingham. And so, part of what I want to do is increasing awareness about the organization. And it's almost like it's the best kept secret. If you don't ever need it, or you don't have a family member, then you may not know that it's there, or you've heard something about it in passing, or maybe on this radio show you've heard about it. But I really think helping people know what we do, that it's, and a lot of people, we say, like, oh, we're sexual assault, like, and they sort of shun, and like they don't want to talk about it. It's a very tough subject, but as I said earlier, statistically, 1 in 2 women are likely to be sexually harassed, 1 in 4 sexually assaulted. And so, I go and I talk to people, and like, how many people have a mother or a sister, and ask them to raise their hand, and it's sort of the same conversation when people who have had cancer. Do you know someone who's had cancer? And the arms will go up. And so it happens. And I think we're, from a generational standpoint, it's easier to talk about maybe than it was in the 70s and 80s. And certainly there's been, with a lot of national media stories happening with the Me Too movement, and you really can't watch a Supreme Court nomination anymore without hearing stories of people who've got the courage to come forward and say, this happened to me.
Law and Order Special Victims Unit.
Yes,
I mean, that has educated a lot of people.
Yeah.
I mean, I know it's a TV show and fake, but it's a drama that does explore this subject, and it's really one of the first shows it has.
Yeah.
So they deserve a little credit for that.
Yeah,
I think.
So the more resources that people get and learn about what services can be provided, and again, not just for I don't like to say victim, but for survivors of sexual assault, but also for someone's husband, someone's boyfriend, someone's girlfriend. How can they help them? And so we do provide.
Because there's that awkward, just how do you talk, right?
Yeah,
to somebody,
and to pretend you've gone through it when you haven't, and so. So we do provide those services for significant others as well, and I think we're seeing those numbers grow as more people feel comfortable enough to say, like, hey, I need some help with this.
Yeah. I'll go back to the counseling just a little bit. So let's. There's been a victim, or like you said, a survivor of sexual assault, and the counselor comes in for the first time. Can you take us through what a counselor kind of does to kind of prepare so he or she knows how she's going to handle, I hate to call them account, but handle this person,
Well, they'll go through kind of a early process, and we'll get a sense of here's what they reported and types of issues that they're experiencing. Want to make sure that they're not a danger or a threat to themselves or anyone else. Yeah. We do, all of our counseling sessions are all confidential, but we are required by law to report if someone is a threat to themselves. And so we want to make sure that that's not the case. And so they'll go through and talk about, kind of learn about them and begin to pull things out and kind of see. And there's different. I'm not a professional counselor, but there are different types of counseling, and there are different. There's like a EMDR movement or cognitive therapy counseling, and so depending on the person and their types of needs, it may be a different type of counseling, a modality of counseling, and so they'll kind of go through and assess that, and then they'll talk with the survivors and kind of help them build a plan. And it may be that the person needs to follow up the following week. It may be that, okay, we're going to give you a couple weeks and we want you to go back and work on these things and come back, and we'll have a further conversation about how that assignment went, and then kind of keep building. And so kind of a building block to getting from point A to point B, and helping them with their kind of a plan of how they want to go through it. So it's I can't say there's not
There's
not
a one Band-Aid to fix it
right,
all.
right.
But
So it's going to really depend on the person and
so your counselors have to be versed in like what direction they need
right.
to take
and,
this.
And there's differences between adults and children.
Yeah.
And so we have folks who have gone through. They're kind of trained in child counseling, and about half of our clients are children under 17.
Yeah.
And so that's another thing that why I get into this business is because
that's the horrible part.
Anyone who's got kids that there's something we can do, but. And so for me, it's can we provide more? We're doing some things now. There's so many people that need help, and even with other mental health providers or counseling, service providers in our area, there's wait lists. There's people that you can call and they say, well, we can schedule you in 3 or 4 weeks, right? Well, that doesn't help you if you're going through a crisis now. And so we're working on some things we're doing like a Dungeons and Dragons group, so we can do like some group kind of counseling with bringing people together. And begin having some conversations until we can get them in to see a regular counseling session. So we're trying to be creative with.
That's neat. Yeah. The other thing I want to talk about a little bit here, and I don't know how to, again, if it's an under 17 and they're still in school, or if it's an adult in the working class in the work environment. What happens? Who does you or the counselors or police, or how do they contact or let either the employer or the school know that something's happened to this person, and they either they can or can't come back to work, and how does that work, or do you get involved in that part of it?
We can. So if it's a work related issue, there's a whole nother set of laws that pertain to the rights of survivors to be able to get time off to go to their court hearings or those things. And if you're working, paycheck, as most people are, paycheck to paycheck, or a lot of people don't get paid. You have to take a time off to go to a court hearing or see a counselor, and they're not going to pay you. And so, but there are laws that our legal advocates can help them understand what the process is, and help talk to the employer if we need to, just to say, hey, here's the law, and we just we want to help make sure you understand how you can help your employees. The school districts, we actually go to the schools a lot of times for counseling. We'll provide counseling for school-age children inside in the school setting, because that way they're, if this is a small town and everyone knows if their car's parked in, the back of our building, they're probably there to for that. And so we try to provide as greatest confidentiality just in terms of where that service is at and meeting them where they're at. I think that's a key part, is instead of making people drive from Mattoon to Charleston, well, we'll go to Mattoon. And we'll meet you there if that's what's going to work better. And so working with the school administrators and helping them understand, working with, a lot of times there's a Title IX programs, and so we work with those folks, both the public schools, but also with Lakeland and here at Eastern as well. We do a lot of work with Eastern. It's a great partnership that we've got with Eastern Illinois University, and it's a new interpersonal violence subgroup. It used to be called the Sexual Violence Prevention Team. I think they've kind of renamed themselves, but so we work with them a lot, and just helping people know where they can go for help. And how we can support them, because there's different programs, different services that a Title IX office can do, which is a different set of processes than a state's attorney's office. It's a whole different ballgame, and so we try to make sure we can provide support for them as well.
If you are an outside person and you think someone's being sexually assaulted, whether it's a child, adult, wife, like you said, brother, son, daughter, what is there an anonymous way you can give a tip?
Yeah, we have a 24-hour hotline. Which is, again, completely confidential, that people can call, and then we will try to get some basic information, and then work on providing that information to if it's a legal advocate, particularly if it's there's always 911. That's always a thing to provide as well. But I think making that first report, and there's a state hotline as well that people can call, and for DCFS, and there's whether someone's a mandated reporter or not a mandated reporter, and so but generally to let someone know if you have reason to believe that someone's been a victim, then I always think it's best to notify.
Okay, that's a good answer. Yep. Misconceptions about SACIS or your job, or what's out there that you would like to maybe stomp on today?
Maybe a misconception that we're a government agency. We're not. We're a 501c3 organization. We were started in 1977, and so
So all the money is basically has to be raised locally.
Via
grant,
via
grants,
right?
Yeah.
And so we do we do work a lot through our coalition, the Illinois Coalition Against Sexual Assault, and so they, there are federal grant dollars that come through and state grant dollars, and so we actually will apply, on behalf of our organization with them, and competing against, there's 30 other sexual assault centers across the state, and so we're, and we all get along great, but we're
everybody wants their share, right?
Well, and there's need, and so we do a lot of grants. I'd say we're probably over 90% grant funded, and so which is great at level of support. But it's also what I want to do and be able to accomplish here is that we can diversify that a little bit. And be able to raise more money locally. When COVID hit, we were raising about $45,000 a year in local fundraising. Our last audit year, we raised, it was $10,000 in that first year of COVID.
COVID hurt everybody. I mean,
so
everything.
We lost, $32,000 might not sound like a lot in a big budget, but $32,000 provides a lot of help. It provides a lot of clothing and hygiene items for people at the hospital who need it. And
are you planning on bringing? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
One of the things I wanted to mention too is that a lot of these grants that we apply for, and Hope and everyone else, there are a lot of restrictions on those, and so you can't use it for this or you can't use it for that, and so when we're able to raise money locally, and people can, we can be able to support other things that maybe the grant can't do, right, and so that
we have that same thing at WEIU when we get money for certain things. We can only, I get it, Yep. I had a brain lock. What I was going to ask you next because you got me interested there. When you talk about your job, how do you stay motivated? Because this isn't an easy job to go to every day, I assume.
Yeah, I mean, there are days that are great days when you see some positive things at the end of the tunnel, or you hear those success stories that we talked about earlier. But for me, I think it's our staff, and we've got such a tremendous staff, and I think finding ways to keep them engaged and finding ways that we can support them and their work. They're the ones on the front line. I mean, I'm the executive director. I'm involved in a lot of different things, but they're the ones that are responding to the
Boots
hospital
on the ground,
2 o'clock in the morning, or 7 o'clock in the morning. They're the ones in the courtrooms, working and being those advocates and teaching the prevention classes and answering our phones and those hotline calls that have come through. And I take hotline calls too, so I've had my share of those. But I think, we want to keep them. They're great people. They're compassionate about what they do. They love the work that they do. And we're also finding ways that we can support them because people do need time off. I mean, there's times when you hear a horrible story, and I tell people you can't unhear the stories that you hear, and you can't unsee things that you've seen. And so, I mentioned earlier, I worked a lot with the Red Cross, and you see that trauma from disasters, and this is very traumatic work that we do. And so, for me, part of the motivation is the challenge is what can we do to extra types of benefits that we can provide our employees, and maybe it's an extra day off here or there, or those types of things. And so, and making them feel appreciated and recognized. Okay,
we got just under a minute left. Talking to David Schayer today from SACIS. David, if somebody wants to get more information, can you direct them to your website, phone number? What's the easiest way to get all to SACIS?
Absolutely. I think there's a great way for folks. If you want to learn more information about what we do, you want to get involved, you'd like to make a donation, become a volunteer, you can go to SACIS.org. That's SACIS.org. Our information's there. Give us a call, 217-348-5033.
Well, I appreciate it. I appreciate you coming in, and the first time we've had you on, and you're a great guest, and I think a lot of good information out there. So it was great to meet you, and thank you.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you for all your listeners.
$1 million question, will you come back?
I'll be back as soon as you'll have me.
All right. That was David SACIS, that's David Schayer from SACIS. Everybody, I hope you had a great day. This is WEIU. We'll be back next Monday right here at noon with Issues and Attitudes.